Coming up in all angles, Keith Clark, shot and killed by JDF soldiers in 2010 during the search for this man.
It has been a rough ride for my family and myself and all other concerned parties.
Now the court wants the soldiers to stand trial.
The criminal proceedings should be restored to the trial list.
Good evening and welcome to this week's edition of All Angles. I'm Milton Walker, and a very special welcome to our viewers on onespotmedia.com. Yesterday, the Constitutional Court ruled that the certificates of good faith issued by then Security Minister Peter Bunting in 2016, which in effect provided immunity to 3 soldiers involved in Keith Clark's death, were null and void. We spoke yesterday with the widow of Dr. Keith Clark, who spoke for the very first time since the incident. Dr. Claudette Clark spoke with TVJ's Giovanni Dennis.
My reaction was very emotional because I've been going through this for 10 years now. May will make 10 years. So I was very emotional at first, but also in that emotion was happiness. Happiness because I feel that the laws of our country and the court system is working. And I feel confident that justice will be served and whatever ruling the courts make will be fair, because I believe that this is my country and I have to believe in the system, and I'm still hoping and praying that everything will be well. But it has been a rough ride for my family and myself and all other concerned parties. And I just want to take this opportunity to say also that I am also concerned even for the other parts, because I know I've been suffering for 10 years, so I understand that they probably too have been suffering too. But my Christian principles and God is in charge of my life, and I know that the truth will come out and justice will be served.
When you say you're hoping that all things will be well, what exactly are you hoping for? What are you hoping to happen?
Well, I'm hoping that when it goes to court, the right decision will be made. The right verdict will happen. Whatever is right, that is what I'm hoping that will happen. Yeah.
Just before I go to your attorney, in terms of, you said it has been a rough ride, May will make it 10 years. Just tell me a little bit about how it has been for the last 10 years.
Oh, my goodness, that will take a long time. I mean, it's a rough ride, pulling away from your home, have to leave your home, all that you have worked and built, was technically not living anywhere. Felt a little wild, but just my children and my family members taking care of us. Didn't have a vehicle and all of that. I don't want to go into it, but it has been really rough. But one thing I had my job, and I'm a hard worker, so I work and try to, live as comfortable as I can, but not necessarily what I was accustomed to.
We also sought reactions from the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions.
After having done a ruling on a file that was submitted in respect of the killing of Mr. Keith Clark, I preferred a voluntary bill of indictment against 3 soldiers, charging them for murder, and initiated prosecution in the matter in the Home Circuit Court. The matter has spent several years on the list. The Crown has always been ready in terms of prosecution, and I believe it was in 2018 sometime when we thought finally we were going to be proceeding with the trial. Counsel for the defense submitted what was termed good faith certificates issued by the then Minister of National Security, and made submissions to the court that the trial of the matter would have to effectively stop. After hearing submissions from myself, I was prosecuting counsel at the time, and further submissions from the defense, the court took the view that the matter should be referred to the Constitutional Court for certain legal issues touching and concerning the constitutionality of these good faith certificates, and also the ability of the DPP to proceed with initiating the prosecution in the matter and continuing with the trial, that it should be ventilated in that venue. Mr. Adley Duncan, Acting Deputy Director of Public Prosecution, and Ms. Latoya Bernard, Assistant Director of Public Prosecutions, were counsel from this office who were assigned to represent me at the hearing of the Constitutional Court.
Just before I go to Mr. Duncan, your immediate reactions to the decision this morning in the court?
Well, it's quite a voluminous judgment, but I have had a quick look at it, especially the conclusions that the learned judges came to, and I've also been briefed by Mr. Duncan, who has had a little bit more time to digest the judgment, and of course he was integral in it. And I believe that justice has been done, and the prosecution of these 3 soldiers will continue as soon as the matter is taken from the mention list, where it has been there in abeyance waiting for this matter to be concluded. So arrangements will be made at the next mention date for the matter to be put back on the mention list after we have had, on the trial list, after we have had mutually convenient dates being arranged or agreed between defense counsel and prosecuting counsel.
Can you say that part again in terms of what will happen going forward?
What will happen going forward is that when the matter comes up for mention, it's on the mention list because it was waiting for the conclusion of the Constitutional Court hearing. A judgment having been delivered, well, we are now in a position to agree a trial date with defense counsel, and when that has been done, the matter will be taken from the mention list and put back on the trial list.
Mr. Duncan, what were the arguments that you brought to court regarding the issue of the good faith certificates?
Well, the first thing I should say is that there were a number of parties involved in the matter. We adopted the arguments of the claimants. The claim was brought, the claim that we joined was brought by the estate of the deceased. That's right. And Indicom also presented arguments with which we found ourselves in agreement. We made our own arguments. We elaborated on some aspects of the arguments because the particular role of the DPP is quite singular and quite different and quite peculiar.
And in fact, quite unique.
Unique because of her constitutional authority, Section 94, of course, of the Constitution. So the arguments that our office made, that myself and Ms. Bernard made in court, were largely geared towards the peculiarity and uniqueness of her constitutional office. So essentially the arguments that we made were that the certificates were what they were. They purported to be an immunity from prosecution. However, the arguments that we made were that the certificates could not operate in that way. Also, the argument, an argument that we made was that on the face of the documents themselves, they refer to a forum or an opportunity to challenge the good faith being claimed. And the argument that we made was that the best forum for that challenge to take place would ultimately be a criminal trial through a criminal prosecution, which that argument was successful.
And your reactions to that success?
I'm always happy when the rule of law is vindicated. As lawyers, we're always happy when judgments come that are sound, that are logical, that are clear, that are easy to follow. And I think my reaction is more for the family of the deceased, because this incident took place many, many years ago. They have been waiting for the trial to take place. Everything was in place in April 2018 for the trial to take place. These certificates were presented, and now you have this matter, and the trial is in abeyance awaiting the outcome of this matter. So they must feel relief that the matter can now go forward to trial, and I feel relief, for them, and I share it with them.
And may I indicate that in the concept of the rule of law, you have the protection of the accused in this case, who are entitled to due process under the Constitution, which means that all parties, including the prosecution, must do everything to make sure that they have a fair trial. But the pendulum of justice has to swing in another direction. So it swings in their direction, but it also swings in the direction of the deceased and the victims in this matter, the deceased and his family, who also have a right in the public interest to have the issues arising that surrounded the death of Mr. Clark fully ventilated. So the pendulum of justice will now be allowed to swing in that direction. So with the rights of the accused to due process and a fair trial, juxtaposed with the rights of the deceased and his family to know exactly what occurred, the public interest, I believe, would be the winner in this entire process.
And after the break, we'll be speaking with the attorney representing Keith Clark's family, Leonard Green. Stay with us.
What's now permitted on the campaign trail?
Because of her class and her color, some people said this lady is more qualified than me. That is history.